It's election time, or election preview time. The election's tomorrow. We're going to go over all that today and one of the better Halloween pranks I've ever seen. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. It's here. Aren't you excited? I'm excited, and you should be excited. I actually thought about playing a gag on everybody tonight and talking about how I'm wearing black as a funeral service for what's about to happen to America if Joe Biden wins tomorrow. I'm not doing that. I can't do that. And let me tell you something. You need to calm down. I know you need to calm down. You know how I need to know that? You know how I know that? Because my phone has been melting now for a week. Family, friends, everybody who's blessed enough to have my phone number. Jesse, what's going to happen? Jesse, please tell me Trump's going to win. Jesse, I'm so worried about it. People, if that's my phone, if that's my family and friends, that means it's probably how you feel as well. One, Trump's probably going to win. And let me explain why I say that, because I don't want people to think I'm just trying to be some homer for Republicans here or for Trump or something like that. I do not believe America is a fire-breathing right-winger like me. I do not. I don't think there's any evidence of that. I'm not one of these guys who pretends I am the mainstream. Everybody feels like I feel. No. I know I am the outlier. I get that. If I were ever elected as president or king or something, the United States of America, you can't even imagine what I would do. I would leave this federal government a smoldering ruin by the time I left, so all the power was back to the states and the people. An absolute smoldering ruin. That's not America. So I'm not of the belief, and you shouldn't be either. Let me correct some thinking I'm seeing out there. It's because of Trump. Trump's going to win. Trump's going to win all the electoral college votes. Trump's going to win California too, and New York. People, let's calm down on that. America's not that right wing. It's just not. There are plenty of lefties out there, lots of them. I think Trump is going to win for a few big reasons. One, he's a sitting president. You're watching me now, so you've already heard me say it. Allow me to tell you again. Sitting presidents get reelected, period. But what about Jimmy Carter? There were gas lines, 20% interest rates, and it still took a political phenom, Ronald Reagan, to bounce Jimmy Carter out. What about George H.W. Bush? The only time there's been a viable third-party candidate. He undoubtedly beat George H.W. Bush, and George H.W. Bush wasn't even any good, and he still would have beat Bill Clinton. Sitting presidents get reelected. Joe Biden is no phenom. Donald Trump doesn't have 20% interest rates, long gas lines, an international disaster with American hostages in Iran. These things don't exist. And I'm not one of these people who's like, Donald Trump is the perfect God king, so he's getting reelected. That's not true. I would say overall as president, he's been outstanding. He's not perfect. There's plenty you could criticize about. He's getting reelected. One. Two, the Black Lives Matter Antifa violence. I don't think it matters as much for the election for people who are in the city. New York City is still going to vote Democrat. Los Angeles, Chicago, these places are still going to vote Democrat. It's the television product it gave people like you and I. That's what terrified people, because you and I, we do something. It's human nature. We personalize things, don't we? So if I'm not in New York City, and I'm not happy to be in Texas, if I'm not in New York City and I'm watching New York City burn, I'm watching Antifa murder, assault people, I'm watching Black Lives Matter guys murder, assault people, loot, I'm watching it, and I'm not only feeling bad for the people there, and I am, I'm doing what? I'm thinking, oh man, what if that happened here? What if that happened? That can't happen here. People will run, sadly, oftentimes, but people will run to safety before they run to anything else. That garbage in the streets made people feel unsafe. And it was killing Joe Biden in the poll numbers, because initially, remember, all the candidates were out campaigning and they were all offering their words of support for all of it. Kamala Harris, Biden, we got Biden staffers offering to defund the police fund and bailing people out of jail. And they're all in, right? Woohoo, this is awesome. And then they turned on a dime. Joe Biden's now, well, there's no call for violence. There's no place for violence here. Do you think they just had a change of heart? No. They got some poll numbers and they were all, this really is making us look bad. But I don't think people have forgotten. I don't think they've forgotten at all. So I think that's another reason. Another reason, this is a big one too, and this gets uncomfortable. People expect certain things out of their commander-in-chief. A lot of you know this about JFK. Some may not. You know JFK, right? Everybody knows John F. Kennedy. Young, good-looking senator, then President of the United States. Everybody knows the guy. You know, dated Marilyn Monroe while he was married, but he's that guy. It's JFK. Cuban Missile Crisis, all that. You know JFK had humongous health problems. He had a back injury from his war hero days where he had broken his back, and he had to wear basically a male girdle that kept his body up straight at all times. You know, he had some kind of disease, I'm not going to go into it, where it made his skin all blotchy. That's why JFK always looked tan. He was always tanning to make sure you couldn't see that. Now, why? Why did FDR do everything he could do to make sure you didn't really see him in the wheelchair? People have a certain expectation on what they want out of their leaders, out of their commander-in-chief. You do, I do, everybody does. And one thing people do not like at all is physical and mental weakness. I believe part of the reason Hillary lost last election, you can call me crazy all you want, I believe part of it was the constant coughing on the campaign trail, falling down all over the place. And then there was that video, you remember the video I'm talking about, don't you? Where she passed out on her feet and they had the chucker in the back of a van like an old love seat, you remember? People don't want that in their commander-in-chief. Joe Biden looks like crap. Joe Biden sounds like crap. He looks and sounds old and tired. He does not look and sound like a commander-in-chief. He's just not that. And the enthusiasm for him, not that I blame Democrats, who could get excited about him? Donald Trump, love him or hate him, Donald Trump creates excitement. He's out there now doing 4 or 5 rallies a day. I ran into a Trump parade here in Houston. I didn't even know what was going on. Everybody's honking and waving and laughing. Trump is having boat parades. Have you ever heard of any candidate in this country having boat parades? And look, you can blow that off. I'm a little too old for that nonsense myself at this point in time. But do you think people are looking at Donald Trump boat parades going by, Trump flags, pretty girls, beer, people waving, having fun? Do you think people are looking at that and finding that more or less appealing than a bunch of screeching feminists in the street for the left? Who doesn't want to go to a boat parade? It matters. It matters. Those are all the reasons I think Trump wins. If Biden doesn't win, and I should note, I am going to be live for election night coverage with Buck Sexton tomorrow night. So you don't have to change the channel. You tune in here for the long haul. We're going to be joking. We're going to be talking through everything all night long. But if Biden wins, and he might, look, he could. I know we joke about me being the oracle. Biden could win. He could. We'll be okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to be right here on this show talking to you about it every single night. We're going to have some laughs about it. I know it sucks. It's not like I'm going to be cheering. I'll be bummed out too, but we'll be fine. We're going to be fine. This is not a time to be anxious or stressed. This is a time to enjoy it. This is the time when the blood is flowing. This is as good as it gets. It's game time, baby. Get your head in the game. Hear me? All right. Trump is at a lot of rallies. Here he is in Florida.
What a great victory we had. And we're going to have an even bigger victory. Get out there and vote. We're going to have a bigger victory. And I don't know if you found out, you've been here a long time. I hope the music was good. I hope life is good. Everything's good. That's a good-looking crowd. Good-looking people, I will say. No, we're going to have a big victory.
forgetting about what he said, just pretend as best you can. I know you're not neutral. Pretend as best you can you're neutral. Or maybe you're a young person trying to figure out what you believe politically, which way you want to go. Did that look like a place you'd like to be? Did those people look like they're having fun? Versus the Joe Biden events with three ancient people sitting there huddled up in a corner with masks on and they're 6 feet away circles. Yeah, Donald Trump's the devil. What looks like more fun? Jason Miller said this.
Well, we feel very good. We think that President Trump is going to hold all of the Sun Belt states that he won previously. And as you look to the upper Midwest, Joe Biden has to stop President Trump in 4 out of 4 states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. If President Trump wins just one of those in 3 of the 4 he won last time, he will be a reelected president. There's a really important point here, George, that I want to make, is that the entire electorate has shifted. The coalitions are different this go around. The fact that Joe Biden had to go back to Minnesota, a state that Republicans haven't won since 1972, just the other day, shows how they're worried about state shifting. President Trump is going to get well over 10% of the black vote. I think he'll get over 20% of African-American men. President Trump will probably get 40% of the Latino vote. The entire demographic shift within these parties, it's a different world now, George, and that's why we're trying to turn out our supporters. We feel good about it. And the one final thing, George, if you speak with many smart Democrats, they believe that President Trump will be ahead on election night, probably getting 280 electorals, somewhere in that range. And then they're going to try to steal it back after the election. We believe that we will be over 290 electoral votes on election night. So no matter what they try to do, what kind of hijinks or lawsuits or whatever kind of nonsense they try to pull off, we're still going to have enough electoral votes to get President Trump reelected.
Let me clarify one of the things he was just talking about the hijinks after. What you need to watch out for is Pennsylvania. And I'm not pretending like that's the only place there are going to be hijinks. There are always Florida. Everybody knows about Florida and things like that. Pennsylvania is the one that could be very, very uncertain. If Joe Biden has a solid victory on election night, it's over. If Donald Trump, as he pointed out, if it's high enough, if Donald Trump has a solid victory on election night, it's over. If it's down to Pennsylvania, we have big problems. Pennsylvania has a nut job Democrat governor. They have a nut job Democrat attorney general. These people are absolutely out of their mind. They're out of their mind, and now they have a setup there where they're going to keep counting ballots until Saturday. I talked to somebody who's an expert on Pennsylvania politics that said at the local level, at the smallest levels, this will be a disaster. If it's down to Pennsylvania, there's a chance we don't know, which is, again, back to my original point about you calming down. I want us to have results tomorrow, as bad or worse than you do. We might not, all right? We might not. You'll be all right. Rona McDaniel said this.
I think women are coming back. Women make a majority of the healthcare decisions, and as they see us on track to a vaccine, they see the therapeutics coming in. They want to see their kids in school. They agree with things like school choice that Republicans are putting forward, and also law and order. What we're seeing in these cities, Democrat-run cities, have really brought women back to President Trump because they do not want to see cities burned down, the looting, the rioting. We're seeing this in Philadelphia right now. They don't want to see police defunded. So women are issue voters. We know this, Margaret. We're not monolithic. We're over 50% of the electorate. We're not single issue voters, but we're making decisions based on our lives, and every single issue impacts us. But I do think one of the overwhelming issues we're seeing that's bringing them back right now in the suburbs is law and order.
No question about it. No question about it. All that may make you uncomfortable, or maybe it made you very comfortable, but I'm right. Now, one thing I do know, markets, they tend to go a little haywire around election season, but even if nothing happens with the market tomorrow night, next night, we still have a massive bubble. No matter who gets elected, we are still in a situation where we're spending now $3 trillion more than we're bringing in 1 year. The debt, we don't even have to discuss that, and we're printing trillions of dollars. This ends at some point. You know that, right? And it ends painfully. Go get a gold IRA from Gold Alliance as part of your portfolio. Gold Alliance has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They will take care of you. They make it easy. Go to goldalliance.com/Jesse. That's goldalliance.com/Jesse. We'll be back. One thing I've found extremely interesting over the past week or so is this senior vote out there. And let's clarify something. I've heard it a million times this election. I've heard it a million times every other election of this is the year of the young people. Young people are going to be motivated to vote. This is the year. And then every single time on election day, the young people are drowning in bong water and the old people actually go vote. Old people decide elections. They vote. How do they feel about Trump? I've heard it both ways. I've heard it polled both ways. How do they feel about Trump? And I'm asking because of the coronavirus thing. I understand Trump's GOP values are probably going to be more in line with more older people's values because they're more old school, which is cool. The coronavirus thing. You see, I don't have to personally be worried about coronavirus. I'm not, because I'm at an age and good enough shape where I'm probably going to be fine. Older people, especially ones with pre-existing conditions, are legitimately at risk, and they have friends and family members at risk. And I have seen numbers out there that they're upset. They wanted him to do more lockdowns, which is insane and absurd, but is that something out there that's a thing? If Donald Trump loses this election, I've had people tell me behind the scenes that it'll be because of that, because they wanted more done. Lockdown, go home forever, just don't let me die. Okay. I don't know that that's the case. If it is, Donald Trump certainly doesn't act like it's the case because he's out there talking about canning Fauci at the rallies.
Would like to talk about COVID, and then next time, here's what happens November 4th. You won't hear too much about it. You won't hear too much about it. Don't tell anybody, but let me wait till a little bit after the election. I appreciate the advice. I appreciate that. No, he's been wrong on a lot. He's a nice man, though. He's been wrong on a lot.
And he has been. I mean, maybe you've forgotten, or maybe you've tried to wipe it from your memory. I would understand that. You remember when all this coronavirus stuff started up? And that dude's face was on TV every freaking day. Social distance here, wear a mask there. And now these idiotic solutions have completely taken over American society. You can't go get some nails at Home Depot on Sunday without having to stand in this circle. Oh, wait, you have to stand in that circle. Oh, put your mask on. You remember where all that began, right? And everybody thought that guy was a saint in the beginning. And who told you? Who told you otherwise? Me. I told you how that was going to go. Gosh. All right, there's another minor controversy out there, and of course, it turned out to be a bunch of garbage. Joe Biden's campaign bus cruising through Texas, a bunch of Trump supporters with big old pickup trucks and Trump flags in the back decide they're going to basically drive with the bus. And one of Joe Biden's, some of his staffers are in this white SUV behind the bus. And they're right beside this gigantic jacked up pickup. And this wee little white SUV tries to kind of run the big Trump truck off the road. That doesn't work that way. Okay, there's a reason there's weight classes when it comes to fighting, like ultimate fighting and boxing and wrestling. If you're in a small vehicle, and if you're in any vehicle, don't try to run someone else out of the lane because it doesn't go well.
Funniest thing I've ever seen, man. They're like chasing him. This is in New Braunfels right now, and they're like, look at this. They're like literally escorting him out of town on the Trump flags. Oh my God, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. They're like hundreds of them. They're escorting him out.
And you saw the big truck that was right behind the bus. That was the one that, well, there was a merging issue there. It's hilarious. And of course, because there's a merging issue and the white SUV ends up with these big tire marks down the side of it, they, of course, start complaining that the Trump fans did something wrong, which turns out we have video now shows they didn't. But the most amazing part, word came out that the FBI was investigating that. Wait, what? What? The FBI doesn't have more important things to do? I can't believe, at least Trump's mad about it too. Quote, in my opinion, these patriots did nothing wrong. Instead, the FBI and justice should be investigating the terrorists, anarchists, and agitators of Antifa who run around burning down our Democrat-run cities and hurting our people. And daggone if that isn't right. Come on, FBI, please. Please. All right. Cybercrime is not something that's about to be done. We're not almost past cybercrime. Because it's such an online world now, you have to wrap your mind around the fact that's where the criminals are. And you don't even think about your home title, right? It's just a piece of paper. No, it's money. It exists online, and in the eyes of these cyber thieves, it's money. They hack in and get it. They forge your signature on it. Looks totally real. I saw it. Happened to me. Looks totally real. They go take a loan out against it. You have to pay that loan back. And even if you don't, you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars in court trying to get it reversed. Or you can just get Home Title Lock. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Use the code RADIO. Sign up today. That actually gets you 30 days for free. We'll be back. Joining me now, contributor and resident polling expert at Red State, Scott Hounsell. Scott, polling. Everybody on the right loves to scream about polling and how it's all rigged now and it's a total disaster. Everyone on the left will defend the thing. People are all over the map on polling. Is polling more difficult now than it has ever been before? And if so, why?
Ultimately, because of the divided nature, the polarization that's occurred in our country. I think that a great deal of people have led to the fact that they won't admit their polling choices or their election choices because they're worried about recourse of it, violent or being criticized or an argument ensuing. So getting people's actual opinions on polling data is a lot lower than it once was, I would say, 20 years ago.
See, I find that to be so odd. Now, not the shame part. I'm sure you're 100% right about that. But it's so easy to connect with people these days. Social media, texting, all these things. It's so easy to connect. I would think there'd be more information available. From a layperson's point of view, why can't you just call or text 50,000 people?
So you can theoretically go after that, but the problem that exists with a lot of this is in the opt-in nature of this polling data. Is that when people are able to choose their results when they're able to say, hey, I'm a registered Republican, this is how often I vote, it reduces the reliability of that data. And so when we talk about the fact that most polls these days use user-defined responses, it reduces the reliability. And again, it allows for people to allow their own biases of whether or not, like, being attacked or whatever it may be, they let their biases enter in.
Are there rigged polls? I mean, is that something that happens out there? I understand, like I said, I'm sure you've seen it 1,000 times. People on the right think everything is rigged against them. I'm sure that has to be some true in some cases, or is that just a bunch of crap?
I wouldn't say that it's intentional malfeasance, that they're like, oh, we're going to go out and flip these polls so they look bad for Trump. I think that ultimately what it comes down to is there is a lack of what's the word I want to use here? There's a lack of care towards really trying to sample the people. You can't have New York Times, Siena, right at what I think they have like 383 votes going to Biden, and Trafalgar right at 284 votes going to Trump. So they can't simultaneously exist in the same universe. So either there's a problem with sampling, which I do find quite often, or there's a even larger problem with the data that they're using to contact the voters in the first place. That sampling issue of whether or not they're actually using voter logs, being able to contact voters based upon their propensity, how often they vote, party registration, depending upon whether or not the state registers according to party. all these things are very, very important in trying to determine who you're contacting and whether or not they're actually going to vote.
Okay. So what's your feel on this? Obviously, I see a bunch of things from both sides. These stupid electoral maps that are all over social media. I've got people on the right saying Trump's going to win New York. People on the left saying Biden's going to win Texas. Come on, people. Let's wake up here. What's realistic?
So if you look at just early returns, and this goes back to the fact of talking about the messaging from the left and the narrative, there was the narrative, we have to show up. We have to be voting. We have to have all of our mail ballots in. Remember the big mail push. Everyone needs to get a mail ballot. Everyone needs to return their mail ballot. And in early returns, that did show. Democrats jumped out to an early lead in a lot of states. In California, for instance, I mean, it was like a 40-point lead for Democrats in a lot of these competitive districts. However, in some of these competitive districts, that number shrunk down to 8 going into Election Day. So a 40-point lead now suddenly becomes an 8-point lead. It's a problem. So if you look at states that like the battleground states of Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. Of those states, Trump leads in 5 of them in early returns. So Election Day, either Dems have to really, really turn out on Election Day in these states, which we don't think is going to happen according to the polling, or they have to flip enough of these Republicans, which we also don't think is going to happen. So it's a not a good look for Dems coming for tomorrow.
Now, help people explain or help people understand the early voting versus Election Day voting. They obviously know what early voting is, but so Democrats in general, if I think I understand this correctly, Democrats need to be way ahead in early voting because Republicans will catch up on some level on Election Day. Is that right?
That's correct. It's twofold, actually. It's not just how many votes they've garnered or whether or not they're up come Election Day or the morning of Election Day. It's also how many votes they have left to get. Remember that there's only a certain amount of universe. You can't fabricate votes. You can't get votes from Mars or whatever. The votes that are contained are a universe. That universe is minute or is fixed. And so, for instance, let's just take into consideration that, like, in the battleground states, right now we're at 1.56% more votes cast in Nevada than in 2016. So there's an additional turnout there. But if we use a 2.5% to 5% increase in turnout, they're still short 19.48% of the total vote they need to win, essentially, or that will be cast in Nevada, or between 19 and 22% short. However, if you look at battleground states like let's talk Pennsylvania for a second. Pennsylvania still has 61.36% of the 2016 vote yet to be cast. If we use a 2.5 or 5% increase, that's 63.41 to 64.62% of the vote still to be cast in Pennsylvania. Now, Democrats have a huge lead of like 45, 43 points in early returns in Pennsylvania. However, if Election Day goes 2-1 to Trump, it's a different race.
Explain Arizona to me. And full disclosure, I lived in Arizona for 8 years. I ran for Congress and lost twice in Arizona, so I know the state. I know they had 2 Republican senators at least when I was there. And I understand the current Republican running for office there, Martha McSally, is an absolute dog meat Republican candidate, and that's hurting us because she's running against an astronaut. But is it really believable that Arizona could go blue? That just was not thought of when I was there.
I think it has to deal with the left that has left California and gone to Nevada and Arizona, that you can explain the shift to the left in Arizona. So it's the California transplants who left California primarily because of the crappy policies here, and then took those same policies and are trying to institute them in Arizona. However, in Arizona, again, going into this, had to have a massive lead going into Election Day. Democrats are up by 1 point in returns in Arizona. And they're still, Arizona is anywhere between 8% to meet 2016's number and 22% for a 5% increase of return left in Arizona. So it's a significant amount of the vote still yet to be cast, 25% of the vote potentially, is still laying there. And Dems are only up by 1 going into Election Day.
Scott, is there some place specific, and I'm talking about a district, a county, is there something specific, 2 or 3, not too many, in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, whatever it may be, that people should be watching tomorrow night? Because otherwise we're just drowning in information. You know what it's like. Everybody's on Twitter or on Facebook or on TV. There's 9,000 channels. All right, I'm just an idiot. What should I be watching?
You want to know where I think the difference is going to be is I think in the African-American vote in these battleground states. I think that
how will we know that? Will we know that? Like what it is?
Yes, we will. I mean, in postmortems, I mean, it's not like on exit polls we'll really be able to tell. But if Trump does basically any better than he did in 2016, and polls suggest he will, that's going to be the difference. Also, the other thing that's kind of funny is that in Minnesota, Kanye West is on the ballot, and he's drawing 3% of the vote. And if Kanye West draws 3% of the black vote, or 3% of the vote, it could very well mean the difference between a Biden winning Minnesota and Trump winning Minnesota. I genuinely believe that Kanye is probably drawing more votes from Biden than he is from Trump.
That is, and do you think, just as a side note, this was Kanye trying to win the election for Trump, right? Aren't they, boys?
Yes and no. I think Kanye really genuinely kind of lives in his own world and wants kind of, world Kanye of he thinks he's going to be president. Do I think that there's a little bit of illusion there? Yes. Do I think that there is a play that like Trump was like, oh, you should run because it's going to draw votes from? I don't think that there's like a conspiracy in that regard. No.
Dang it. I love conspiracies. Scott Hounsell, that was awesome, man. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much, man. Have a good day.
That's fascinating. You know what? We need to drag him on TV again tomorrow night because that guy, I have a feeling, is just a wealth of information. All right. We'll be back. Joining me now, Tiana Lowe of the Washington Examiner, and of course, right here on The First. Tiana, everybody seems so miserable leading up to the election. My entire text message exchange from family and friends is, what's going to happen? I'm so worried about everything. I'm having the time of my life. Are you having fun?
I think it's a little bit different here in Washington, D.C. Right now, every single business on my block is boarded up all across town. Storefronts are closing. You would never believe that this is the nation's capital one day before Election Day. Now, who will be doing all the rioting, you might ask? Considering that more people voted for Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, and write-ins combined than Donald Trump in 2016, I don't think it'll be the Trump supporters rioting, no matter what happens in D.C. tomorrow.
Tiana, is this our permanent state of affairs when it comes to America's big cities? I mean, these cities are obviously run by lefty nutjob mayors and not moderate Democrats. These are run by nutjobs at this point in time. And they have flat out sent out the signal that it's okay to trash the place if you want to. Is this just going to be the permanent state of affairs now? Because that sucks. I love cities.
I mean, what they really did signal-wise over the summer when they put in these shutdown orders and they didn't crack down on any of the protests or any of the riots, it basically sent a clear signal that if you want to run your business, if you want to hang out with friends and go to dinner, that is no longer allowed. But we will give free license to these demonstrators who need to have their emotional catharsis out on the street and tank our economy with it. Hopefully this is not the new normal because this is not tenable. But, cities, there has been urban decay and urban decline, and there will be urban decay and urban decline again. I mean, the city of D.C. went through its own problems a couple decades ago, and it really took a lot of urban renewal to get back to the point that it's at. Now there are lots of neighborhoods that are much more lively than they were a decade ago. Downtown Los Angeles, somewhere that really died a century ago and then finally has been revived over the last 15 years. And now downtown Los Angeles, that's where I have a lot of friends who live there, it's dead. It's dead and it feels dystopian. A lot of downtown DC feels the same way. So it at a certain point, the local governments and state governments do not have the same financial monetary powers as the federal government. And I know that you and I harp on the national debt a lot, but with this local debt, there is just not the same flexibility for deficit spending. So when the rich all flee to their Hamptons homes, the rich all flee to Palm Springs, and then the bill comes due, who's paying it? They need to preserve a tax base. Right now, would you want to open up a business in Minneapolis or Portland right now? I sure wouldn't.
Okay. Well, this always leads me to this question, and I cannot wrap my mind around this. I need you to help me understand. If you're some nutball, even a nutball lefty mayor, whoever the mayor idiot is of DC right now is a great example. If you're a mayor, I understand you hate Trump and radical and communism's great and all that other stuff. But you also know what you just said. You don't have a money printing machine. You don't have unlimited borrowing power. And mayors all love to run on giveaways. Nobody runs on what they're taking away. I would, but no one else does. So you're only killing yourself, and you have to know that. If you're Ted Wheeler of Portland, you have to know you've taken Portland, which was an awesome city about 10 years ago, and you've just flushed it down the crapper. How can you not know that?
I think a lot of these mayors are living in the delusion that if Biden wins, that stops everything. That this is a literal hostage situation where we're all supposed to suck it up and just accept that the rioting and the looting is a clear-cut signal we're supposed to vote for Biden, and then everything will be okay. Muriel Bowser in D.C., she, in the summer, was saying, we will not even consider reopening the schools until November 9th. Why is that? But we know that this doesn't end. We know that this does not end with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris winning the White House, even if he does win, which is very possible. The rioting and the looting will not end until we get a sense that public safety is the highest priority in these cities, not allowing these demonstrations that are increasingly violent. Of hundreds that took place over the summer, 7% involved violence and property destruction. This is no way to run a country.
Okay, explain this to me, because I really don't understand this one. How is it beneficial to the left to have craziness like they're doing in Pennsylvania right now? We're going to count ballots till Saturday. We're going to do these other things. I know it's fashionable on the right to say all those ballots are going to be Democrats and they're just going to have dead people voting, and obviously there's some truth to that. But the truth is, it makes your whole state look idiotic. You just end up looking stupid. That governor, what's his name, Tom Wolf of Pennsylvania, looks like a moron today. Well, it might take a week. I mean, who knows? It makes the state look inefficient and poorly run.
It definitely does. And I'm less concerned about this fantasy that we have registered a bunch of illegal immigrants or there are en masse a bunch of dead people voting. What is more the concern is the idea of this mass ballot harvesting, where you can have these overtly politically motivated interest groups collect empty ballots and then potentially fill them out. That's a real problem. And there's a reason why Tulsi Gabbard, again, who I still think would have been the Democrats' best bet for VP pick over Kamala, she has a bill trying to get rid of ballot harvesting. But Democrats refuse to acknowledge that any of it is an issue. In their attempt to refute Trump's notion that millions of ballots are invalid, they are permitting this increasingly toxic practice that really could actually lead to voter fraud.
Is Tulsi Gabbard too hot to gain national political, real national political steam? Now, this is not my way of thinking, but there's a way of thinking out there. I've had people tell me this before privately, that they do not think she will have enough support with the female population because she's so hot. I think that sounds insane to me. I think everybody enjoys, looking at somebody who looks good. Is that crazy talk?
No, I mean, think about how much of the fangirling over Obama was the fact that he had nice arms. Certainly, yes, sexism pops up, and it's obviously been an element of, it was also against Sarah Palin, there was an element of sexism. Tulsi has two bigger issues at hand. One, Tulsi is not a part of this bipartisan, very dangerous alliance between Joe Biden. Yeah, he's a bipartisan president, or he will be a bipartisan president if he wins. Bipartisan in the way of all the illegal wars that the Obama administration loved, and all of the warmongering that got the Republican Party to embrace Trump in the first place. Tulsi Gabbard won't stand for that. This is someone who I would not even call her isolationist, but is more of a foreign policy pragmatist. And that has been deemed heretical in the Democratic Party. Luckily, with Trump, it means that it's less heretical within the Republican Party. If you had told anyone 15 years ago that the Republican Party was slated to become the anti-war party, I don't think anyone would have believed it, but that's where we're heading to. Think about all the illegal wars that Joe Biden has been in favor of. Libya, the Serbia bombings,
All of
someone
them.
who was in favor of the Iraq war. There is no space for a Tulsi Gabbard in a party like that. But I don't think that in the end her appearance will be the thing that hurts her. Why? Because I stand by the fact the first legitimately elected female president will not be someone who shies away from being a woman. That's part of the reason why it couldn't be Hillary.
Tiana, I have this theory, and it's just a theory, that Donald Trump is as nice as the GOP is going to be for a long time. That I feel like so many people, especially within the Beltway, I'm sure you see this, Republicans and Democrats want the Trump era to be over because then things can get back to normal. And I don't see that at all with the electorate. I see Trump being as polite as the GOP is going to be for a while. And at some point, we are going to elect somebody who's just absolutely horrific because the right simply will not stand by as not being a balance to the left's radicalism.
I definitely think that's true. And it's also important to remember, how did we wind up with Trump in the first place? On the one hand, it was because the left turned him into a celebrity. They knew he was a cad with women. They knew what he said about the Central Park Five. They didn't care until he slapped an R next to his name. They're fine with the supposedly racism and sexism until you have an R next to your name. But in terms of what they did to the right that brought us to Trumpism, I mean, you had Mitt Romney about as close to a registered Boy Scout as you could get. And he was smeared as sexist for saying he wanted to platform more women in his administration. He was smeared as racist. He was smeared as cruel for being a mission. He was a bigot. He was a homophobe. And 4 years later, that's how you wind up with Donald Trump, the one who does not apologize. Because we were also sick and tired of being called racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. And one asset of Trump's, to an extent, is the fact that he does wear his heart on his sleeve. I don't think we're going to get the kind of meme that wears their heart on their sleeve, which is much more dangerous, which could be much more cunning.
I agree. See, any problems anybody has with Trump, his style, which I think is childish, but his debt, if somebody has a problem with Trump being a big spender, as I do, that's one thing. I think people do not appreciate how accessible he truly is. The dude gives impromptu press conferences like 9 times a day. Obama never dreamed of doing something like that.
Oh, and when it comes to press freedom and press transparency, all of these people Trump's not the one wiretapping journalists. Trump's the one.
Yeah.
I mean, Maggie Haberman can speed dial him and Trump will go off for 90 minutes over his cheeseburger every night. So it's not this notion that he's not a transparent president is just farcical. And we've already seen, we have, if Joe Biden does win, God help us, I think we've already had a preview of what the next 4 years would be in terms of how they've handled his campaign. Remember Tara Reid? She still exists, but she disappeared. Kamala Harris has not had a single press conference since she's been announced as vice president. Think about it. You had to wait for George Stephanopoulos, Bill Clinton's former head of press or communications director. You had to wait for George Stephanopoulos. It was like pulling teeth watching him to try and get an answer on fracking, to try and get an answer on court packing. And Biden still doesn't have an answer. We still don't know if he's going to pack the courts. We have no idea. Because our firefighting journalist that has reported for the last 4 years on how many scoops of ice cream Trump gets at dinner will not figure out whether or not he wants to overhaul our most trusted branch of the federal government.
Tiana Lowe, everybody. Thank you, ma'am.
See you on the other side, Jesse.
I'll see you. All right. We'll be back. This has got to be one of the funniest, most creative Halloween pranks I've ever seen in my life. These people took a puppy, and you know how friendly puppies are. They have to go after everybody and say hi. They put this gigantic, scary spider thing. You know what? Just watch. a guy going up the stairs. All right. It's election day tomorrow. Live coverage with me and Buck Sexton right here on the First. We'll get you through it. See you then.